In the fall of 1998, Sarah and Michael Carter went to Lake Tahoe for their honeymoon. Local residents last saw them launching their canoe from the small dock on the north shore of the lake. They never returned. The canoe was found empty 3 days later, but in 2024, divers cleaning the lake discovered a submerged bag. Inside the waterproof bag was an old digital camera, and the last photo on its memory card shocked investigators. The image showed Sarah and Michael smiling in their canoe, but there were 4 people in the boat. October 15, 2024, Lake Tahoe, California. Fog had settled early over the lake's surface, as always. Most people had long forgotten Sarah and Michael Carter. It had been 26 years since the couple vanished at Lake Tahoe. Tour guides still sometimes told the story as a legend of honeymooners who never returned home. But local hope had long since died. Everyone assumed they had drowned. That cold October morning, volunteer divers cleaning the lake bottom came across something unusual. A backpack, once black but now covered with mud, wedged between thick reeds. Inside was an old digital camera preserved in a waterproof plastic bag. The camera's memory card was still readable. The photos were faded but distinguishable. Nature shots, selfies, a frame of sandwiches eaten by the lake. A photo of Sarah laughing. But the last photo was different. This shot, taken just before their disappearance, showed not just Sarah and Michael. There were 4 people visible in the boat. The photograph lay flat on the examination table, edges slightly curled. Even through her plastic gloves, Detective Lisa Hayes could feel its weight. Not the physical weight, but the weight of 26 years of silence pressing down on a single image. 2 people sat in the center of the frame, young, tanned, sunlit. The man wore a red baseball cap, tilted back just enough to reveal his soft smile, and a dark smudge of sunscreen across his nose. The woman leaned into him, her cheek pressed lightly to his shoulder, her dark hair windblown and loose. She wore a simple tank top, a wedding ring visible on her left hand. Sarah and Michael Carter, married for 18 days, missing for 26 years. There should have been just the 2 of them in the boat. Everyone remembered it that way. That's how the story always went. A young couple on their honeymoon, seen departing in a canoe on a foggy Lake Tahoe evening. Rental boat, picnic basket, blanket. They were seen leaving around 6 p.m. The boat was found 3 days later, floating empty on the south side of the lake. No signs of struggle, no bodies recovered, no real explanation. Lisa looked closer. It was subtle, barely visible, but once you saw it, you couldn't unsee it. A hand, not Sarah's, not Michael's, resting just behind Sarah's shoulder, pale and thin, with bitten fingernails and veins raised under the skin like blue wire. And behind Michael's head, farther back, almost hidden in the dark area at the stern, a second face. Unsmiling, watching the lens, eyes locked on whoever was taking the photo. There were 4 people on that boat. Lisa didn't speak for a long moment. The evidence lab was quiet, just the soft hum of machines and the distant waves of air conditioning. David Mason, the forensic tech who developed the photos, stood beside her, arms crossed, waiting. "You're sure this hasn't been tampered with?" Lisa asked without looking away. "Positive," David said. "It's from a 1997 digital camera. The memory card specifications match the production lot. We checked timestamps, degradation curves, even tested against UV exposure and lake water decay. It's clean, authentic." Lisa straightened up. Her mind was already reassembling the old case file like a blueprint. October 22, 1998. The Carters rented a boat from the local marina, small canoe, paddles, 2 life jackets. Sarah was 25, an elementary school teacher from Reno. Michael was 29, did custom carpentry work. They'd checked into a small inn at Lake Tahoe for 2 weeks, disappeared halfway through. She had been a child when it happened. Her mother worked part-time at the town pharmacy back then and used to keep wedding registry printouts behind the counter. Lisa remembered Sarah's name on one of them. She remembered the posters, too. Sun-bleached photos stapled to utility poles all over town. Sarah's smiling face. Michael's baseball cap. Missing, last seen October 22nd. Lisa turned back to the table. Do we have a timestamp? David pulled up the digital scan. October 22nd, 6:14 p.m., about 50 minutes before dock attendant Tom Walsh claimed to see them paddling out past the rocky outcrop for the last time. She remembered that statement. It had been buried at the end of the file, dismissed at the time. Tom said he thought someone else was on the dock that night, maybe 2 people. Said they didn't get in the boat, but they watched, didn't blink, gave him a bad feeling. Cops had chalked it up to nerves, maybe small-town superstition. No evidence, no names, no follow-up. And now, here it was. Proof, 1 photo, 4 people. Lisa took a slow breath. The case had been officially closed in 1999, presumed drowned. No bodies, no crime, just a lot of sadness and a funeral without remains. But someone else had been there. 2 someones in the boat, which meant Sarah and Michael didn't just disappear. They weren't lost. They were taken. Back at her office, Lisa pulled the original case file from the archive box and dropped it on her desk with a heavy thud. Yellowed pages, stapled statements, a few grainy photos of the empty boat. Sarah's parents had come from Nevada to give a statement. Michael's brother had flown in from Oregon. A week of desperate searching and then nothing. Just a quiet memorial service and a lifetime of questions. She flipped through the timeline. The rental receipt was there, signed 5:37 p.m. by Michael. The boat's serial number was written in red pen, LT-K 4N27. The weather log showed mild wind, low tide around 7:15 p.m., fog rolling in just before dusk. The boat had been found floating near the south shore 3 days later, both paddles missing, 1 life jacket still tucked under the seat. The canoe had been returned to the marina, cleaned, rented out again. The investigation had ended the day it was pulled ashore. Lisa looked at the whiteboard in her office. She'd scribbled 1 word at the top. Why? Why would someone go out of their way to hide a second couple in the boat? Why take the Carters? Why wait 26 years to be discovered? She looked back down at the photo. Sarah was mid-laugh, her head tilted back slightly. Michael had 1 hand on the paddle, the other wrapped around her waist. Behind them, the other hand, the one resting on Sarah's shoulder, was limp, relaxed, as if they weren't hiding, as if they belonged there. The second face in the shadow stared out from the photo like it had been waiting to be seen. The marina hadn't changed much since 1998. Lisa stood on the warped wooden planks of the main dock, watching as the tide sloshed lazily beneath her boots. The rental shack was still painted the same pale blue, its paint flaking like sunburned skin. A faded boat rental sign hung crooked above the window, barely legible. The new owner, a heavy-set man in his 60s named Phil Walsh, was the nephew of Tom Walsh, the dock attendant who'd given the original witness statement. Tom had passed away 10 years ago. Lisa hadn't expected much from the visit, but Phil, it turned out, had never thrown anything away. He led her behind the counter and unlocked a metal filing cabinet so dented it looked like it had been kicked shut a few dozen times. From inside, he pulled a ledger wrapped in a dry, crumbling paper towel. "This," he said, tapping the cover with a stubby finger, "is every rental record from 1996 to 2000. My uncle was old school, logged everything by hand." Lisa flipped it open. The pages were smudged with grease and salt, and the ink had faded in places, but the handwriting was surprisingly neat. Dates, names, time out, time in, serial numbers, boat condition. October 22nd, 1998. Her eyes landed on the name M. Carter, boat number 8. serial number LT-K4N27, signed out at 5:37 p.m. Estimated return, sunset. She ran her finger down the column. There was no check-in time, just a red circle with a question mark. Phil scratched his chin. My uncle marked it that way whenever someone didn't return a boat. Usually meant they were late or the boat had to be towed. Lisa flipped to the next day, October 23rd. More names, more boats. One entry stood out. Boat number 8 again. Returned at 6:12 p.m. Her brow furrowed. Did someone else use that boat before it was recovered? Phil leaned over. What the hell? That's not right. That boat wasn't back until the harbor patrol dragged it in on the 25th. Lisa examined the line. No signature, just the initials HT in shaky handwriting. Under notes, someone had written, "Returned late, needed cleaning, extra jacket on board." A chill crept down her spine. Do you know who HT is? Phil shook his head slowly. No idea, but this isn't my uncle's handwriting. See here, he always used block letters. This one's cursive. The name HT echoed in Lisa's head as she drove back toward the county archives. HT. It hadn't appeared in any of the original case files, no record in the rental slips, no mention in Tom Walsh's statement, but now it was scrawled in the Marina ledger, dated 2 days after Sarah and Michael Carter disappeared. She'd run the initials through the department database. When she cross-checked against old personnel files from a now-defunct correctional facility, 2 counties over, she found something. An old intake counselor, hired in 1989, last name Torres, first initial H, terminated in 1998, weeks before the Carters vanished. There was no photo on file, just a typed resignation letter and a scribbled note that read, "Boundary issues with juvenile detainees. Termination mutual, advised not to rehire." Lisa stared at the file. Advised not to rehire was the kind of euphemism departments used when they didn't want to deal with the truth. By evening, she had a name. Henry Torres, 59 years old, last known residence Sacramento, California. His employment history included 2 youth camps, a security job at a hospital, and a 6-month stretch as a night shift supervisor at a juvenile detention facility. No criminal record, nothing that would raise flags to the outside world. But every job termination included vague language, inappropriate boundaries, unorthodox behavior, conflict with staff. He moved every 2 years like clockwork, like he knew when people started to notice. She pulled up archived news from the 1990s, scanned every article that mentioned Lake Tahoe, anything about the Carters, even the marina. Then she found it. A photo published in the Lake Tahoe Tribune on October 28, 1998, 6 days after the couple vanished. It showed volunteers dragging the canoe ashore. The caption named everyone in the frame, but it was the man in the background that caught her eye. He wasn't helping. He was watching, arms crossed, distant, dressed in a maintenance uniform, not listed in the caption. She scanned the face. Same jaw, same short hair, same posture. Henry Torres had been there the day the boat was recovered, watching it come home. Lisa's stomach turned. She knew what this was now. It wasn't a crime of opportunity. It wasn't lovers lost at sea. It was a plan. 2 men, 1 boat, a young couple chosen for their isolation, their predictability, their beauty, lured into a trap disguised as a honeymoon. The evidence room at the sheriff's office was cold and quiet, lit by a single flickering fluorescent tube. Lisa stood in front of the rolling metal shelves, hands in blue nitrile gloves, heart pounding. She had the key from the archives clerk and triple-checked the case number before coming. The original Carter disappearance file was boxed and labeled correctly, 98-1022. What she hadn't expected was the second box beside it. Unlabeled, dusty, no barcode, no sign-out sheet, just a masking tape strip across the top with one word written in all caps. Watch. She slid the box free, holding her breath. It was lighter than expected. Inside, beneath a brittle sheet of brown packing paper, was a single VHS tape in a hard plastic shell. No sticker, no title, just black plastic and a faint thumbprint smudged on the edge of the case. She took the tape to the evidence viewing room, locked the door behind her, and slid the cassette into the department's dusty old VCR unit. The screen buzzed to life with static, then color, then movement. A date in the corner, October 22nd, 1998, 6:32 p.m. The image was shaky at first, aimed at the floor of the boat. A cooler, Sarah's sandal. Then the camera tilted upward. Michael was laughing. Sarah was mid-sentence. Something about the tide, her voice soft and playful. They looked sun-drenched and unaware, like any other couple filming a vacation. But the angle was wrong. The camera wasn't in their hands. It was across from them, held low, slightly angled up, filming without their knowledge. Sarah leaned toward Michael, brushed something off his cheek, and smiled. The camera zoomed in slightly. Then the screen glitched. When it stabilized again, they were gone. The boat was still there, floating on calm water. 30 seconds of silence, just the sound of water lapping at fiberglass. Then a voice, male, calm, slightly breathy. "Ready?" Another voice, lower, closer to the mic. "She's still warm." Lisa froze. The camera jolted, now filming someone's legs. Wet jeans, bare feet, the edge of a hand reaching down into the frame. A glimpse of dark hair. Sarah. The camera moved again, now following as something was lifted. Arms, shoulders, head turned to the side. Sarah was unconscious, or worse. Her head lolled. Her shirt was torn. Then the screen cut to black. Lisa sat motionless, one hand still hovering over the pause button. Her pulse roared in her ears. It was real. The tape wasn't a rumor. It wasn't a ghost story. It was a record, and someone had taken the time to hide it. She ejected the cassette, slid it into an evidence bag, and sealed it with trembling fingers. Whoever had logged the original file hadn't included this. It wasn't part of the official inventory. That meant someone in the department, maybe back then, maybe since, had watched it and kept it buried. 2 weeks later, Lisa stood alone in the viewing room and watched the tape again. This time she whispered to the screen, "I see you." And she meant it. They all would. The story wasn't over. It had just begun. Somewhere beneath that water, the truth had waited for 26 years. Now it was starting to rise, and Lisa Hayes would make sure the whole world knew what really happened to Sarah and Michael Carter on that foggy October evening at Lake Tahoe.